Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is holding a first press conference since his election. Let's take a listen in to him speaking there.
Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. On Monday, Canadians elected a new government to stand up to President Trump and to build a strong economy. Canadians also sent a clear message that their cost of living must come down and their communities need to be safe. As Prime Minister, I've heard these messages loud and clear, and I will act on them with focus and determination. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes ont fait entendre.
Canadians made their voices heard with a voter turnout rate that hasn't been seen in the last 30 years. Nearly 20 million Canadians voted, and even more of them voted in early voting than ever before.
The engagement of Canadians at rallies, on social media, and around the dinner table was very high. And while different visions were put forth by various contenders, we disagreed agreeably, and the leader of every party quickly and graciously accepted the results. At a time when democracies around the world are under threat, Canadians can be proud that ours remains strong. As I've been clear since day one of my leadership campaign in January, I'm in politics to do big things, not to be something. And now that Canadians have honored me with a mandate to bring about big changes quickly, I will work relentlessly to fulfill that trust. As I stressed on election night, I am committed to working with others, governing as a team in Cabinet and caucus, and working constructively across parties in Parliament, working in real partnership with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples, and bringing together labor, business, and civil society to advance the nation-building investments that will transform our economy. In the coming weeks, I will unveil more of our plans to engage with Canadians as we embark on the biggest transformation of our economy since the end of the Second World War. This will be an incredibly exciting time as we take control of our economic destiny to create a new Canadian economy that works for everyone. We will begin to set out that new path for Canada with a new cabinet to be sworn in on the week of the 12th of May and the recall of Parliament on May 26th. We will have the privilege of welcoming His Majesty King Charles III, who will deliver Canada's speech from the throne on May 27th. Her Majesty the Queen will join this visit. This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times. Je sais que beaucoup de Canadiens et Canadiennes partagent mon...
I know that many Canadians share my enthusiasm about this.
To the immediate priorities of my government, beginning with our relationship with the United States. As I've stressed repeatedly, our old relationship, based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The questions now are how our nations will cooperate in the future and where we in Canada will move on. Peu après le début de campagne électorale.
Shortly after the start of the election campaign, I met with President Trump, or I spoke to him. We both agreed.
On Tuesday, I had a very constructive call with President Trump, and we agreed to meet next Tuesday in Washington. Our focus will be on both immediate trade pressures and the broader future economic and security relationship between our two sovereign nations. My government will fight to get the best deal for Canada. We will take all the time necessary, but not more, in order to do so. In parallel, we will strengthen our relationships with reliable trading partners and allies. Canada has what the world needs, and we uphold the values the world respects. Au cours des derniers jours, je me suis entretenu avec le président Macron, le président du Conseil européen d'Acosta, le Premier ministre du Japon, Ishiba, et le secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Guterres. J'ai aussi parlé au président Zelensky auprès de qui j'ai raffermé
That's the
l'engagement.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney speaking there. Just a reminder for our viewers that it is customary for the Canadian Prime Minister to give the address both in English and French. Well, to discuss, we're going to turn to our International Affairs Commentator, Doug Herbert, who joins me now in the studio. So, Doug, so Mark Carney, in his first address, in the first press conference since winning a majority on Monday's election, he said he'll bring about a new Canadian government with a new Canadian economy. He said Canada has what the world needs. Yes, Canada has, can offer what the world needs. What stood out to me was that he said the old relationship between Canada and the U.S. is over. Your first impressions on those comments?
Yeah, look, Jetty, first of all, the elephant in the room. We're covering the press conference of a Canadian prime minister. Yes, it's a new prime minister. You could say it's newsworthy, but let's not fool ourselves. We all know the reason we are covering this is to hear what he is going to say about Donald Trump, the president of the giant and increasingly hostile neighbor to the southern border. The president of a hostile neighbor who said repeatedly while Carney was campaigning that he intended to make Canada the 51st state. This rhetoric, this annexation rhetoric really became the clarion call for Canadians to do what they have rarely done in these types of elections. Trump managed to unite Canadians around essentially an anti-Trump message and a free and sovereign Canadian message, a message that Carney was able to carry successfully against, let's remember, against a conservative leader who just a few months ago, just before Justin Trudeau had stepped down as prime minister, had seemed a shoo-in for victory. He was leading by 25 to 30% in the polls. The Liberal Party of Mark Carney wasn't seen as having a snowball's chance in hell of carrying this election. It is the Trump effect, and really almost exclusively the Trump effect. Doesn't mean there weren't other issues in the campaign. You're absolutely right to point out that Mark Carney actually opened his remarks by referring back to the fact that this was a campaign also largely around cost of living issues, housing issues. There's a housing shortage in Canada, and also safety issues. He said communities must be safe. So obviously those, meat and potatoes, economics issues were extremely important to Canadians. And you could argue the voters who didn't rally to Carney on the anti-Trump message voted for the Conservative precisely because they thought at the end of the day that these economic issues, perhaps, excuse the pun, trumped the anti-Trump campaign of Carney. So at the end of the day, Carney knows this is going to be a presidency that pivots, that really centers on how he deals with a very, I'll use a big word, obstreperous president to his south. Like he said, that meeting's going to be on Tuesday. Trump had already indicated, the White House had already indicated it was going to come next week. We now have the day. It's going to be Tuesday. And how he deals with him. We know one thing. Obviously, this news conference is going on. He has made it clear. He is going to be a prime minister that stands up to Donald Trump. He's going to be cordial with him. He is going to try to remain composed with him. And he is going to try to maintain the semblance of a workable, viable relationship because Canada cannot afford to alienate the United States. Too many factories, too much cross-border business and jobs depend on a semblance of good relations. But he draws the line at annexation talk, at Canada being sapped of its sovereignty, and certainly of Canada ever becoming a 51st state. More likely for Mark Carney, America would become a 13th province of Canada.
All right, we will have to see what comes out of that meeting between Carney and Trump next Tuesday, won't we? Thank you very much for that, Doug.